On screen, they were legends. Off-screen, they were lost. Behind every shot fired in Rio Bravo was a soul battling illness, loss, or a slow descent into darkness. This is the story Hollywood never told. Until now. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Let's go. Dean Martin as Dude. Dean Martin, born Dino Paul Crachetti on June 7, 1917 in Steubenville, Ohio, was 42 years old when he took on one of his most poignant film roles, Dude, the Fallen Deputy, in Rio Bravo, 1959. At the peak of his fame, Martin shed his Rat Pack charm to portray a man ravaged by alcoholism and shame, trying to claw his way back to dignity. It was a layered, haunting performance that proved he was more than just a suave crooner or comic foil. It showed a wounded soul beneath the tuxedo. But Dean Martin's real life was even more dramatic than the movies. Born to Italian immigrants, Martin dropped out in 10th grade, bootlegged during Prohibition, boxed bare-knuckle under the name Kid Crochet, and ran underground casinos before finding fame. Though he dazzled audiences with his velvet voice and effortless charisma, behind closed doors he fought demons. His comedy partnership with Jerry Lewis ended in bitterness, and 3 marriages crumbled under the weight of fame and distance. The greatest blow, however, came in 1987 when his beloved son Dean Paul died in a jet crash at just 35. After that, Martin was never the same. The once radiant star began retreating from the world, sad, quiet, and visibly broken. In his final years, Dean was a ghost of his former self. He spent his evenings alone at a Beverly Hills restaurant, wearing the same outfit, eating Clams Casino, and letting the juice stain his shirt. His daughter would sometimes join, but he preferred silence over conversation, famously saying, "I don't mind the chit, it's the chat." The death of his son extinguished something inside him. He declined treatment for chronic emphysema and died on Christmas Day, 1995, at age 78, in his Beverly Hills home. He was buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park, with no grand fanfare, just quiet respect. At the time of his passing, Dean Martin's net worth was estimated at $30 million. John Wayne, as Sheriff John T. Chance. John Wayne, born Marion Robert Morrison on May 26, 1907, in Winterset, Iowa, was 51 years old when he portrayed Sheriff John T. Chance in Rio Bravo, 1959. In this iconic Western, he embodied the classic American hero, stoic, proud, and immovable, fending off a violent gang with the help of a drunk, a kid, and an old crippled man. His role was more than just a shoot-'em-up sheriff. It was a portrait of rugged American masculinity, a man defined by loyalty, honor, and gunslinging grit. But the real man behind the badge was far more complicated and darker. Wayne lived a life riddled with controversy, failed marriages, addiction to cigarettes and alcohol, and a political legacy that still divides public opinion. A vocal anti-communist, he helped blacklist actors during the McCarthy era, starred in propaganda like the Green Berets, and was so aggressively right-wing that Stalin reportedly considered having him killed. And then there was the 1971 Playboy interview where he casually promoted white supremacy, dismissed Native Americans as selfish, and mocked gay characters as fags. His words weren't just opinions. They were raw, unapologetic bigotry, and they burned through the myth of the all-American cowboy like wildfire. Behind the scenes, his personal life was no less turbulent. His second wife, Esperanza Bauer, once pointed a gun at him in a jealous rage. Known as a mean drunk, Wayne clashed with co-stars, alienated liberals, and used his platform to push a version of America that many now see as dangerously outdated. Still, the world adored his larger-than-life image. He was the Marlboro Man with a camera crew, an icon of a disappearing America. John Wayne died on June 11, 1979, at the age of 72 after battling lung cancer and later stomach cancer, a result of smoking 5 packs a day. He passed away at UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles. His grave remained unmarked for 20 years until a Spanish epitaph was added in 1999. Feo, fuerte y formal, ugly, strong, and dignified. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $7 million, earned across more than 170 films. Ricky Nelson as Colorado Ryan. Ricky Nelson, born Eric Hilliard Nelson on May 8, 1940, in Teaneck, New Jersey, was only 19 years old when he played Colorado Ryan in Rio Bravo, 1959. At the time, he was already a teen idol, adored by millions for his dreamy looks and smooth voice. In the film, Nelson shed the boy-next-door image to portray a swift, loyal gunslinger who earns the respect of seasoned men. His performance helped bridge his transition from a squeaky-clean TV star to a more mature, serious actor, young but dangerous and definitely ready. Yet Ricky Nelson's life was anything but smooth. Born into Hollywood royalty, he was thrust into the limelight before he could breathe on his own. From his early days on The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet to topping the charts with hits like Hello, Mary Lou and Travelin' Man, Nelson seemed unstoppable. But the rise came too fast, and the fall hit even harder. The British invasion and shifting rock trends made him a relic by the late 60s. His marriage to dancer Kristen Harmon became a battleground of resentment and addiction. By the early 1980s, he was divorced, depressed, and tangled in lawsuits and IRS debts. From playing himself on TV to playing survival gigs in fading arenas, Nelson fought to stay relevant while drowning in tranquilizers, loneliness, and fading fame. His final years were a desperate attempt at revival. Touring with a new band, chasing the echo of past cheers, Ricky flew into small towns hoping for comebacks. On December 31, 1985, he boarded a plane bound for Dallas. The aircraft caught fire mid-descent near DeKalb, Texas. 7 people died, including Nelson and his fiancée. Only the pilots survived. Rumors of cocaine use swirled in the tabloids, but the official report blamed a faulty cabin heater. At the time of his death, Ricky Nelson's net worth had dwindled to around $500,000, drained by mismanagement, legal woes, and heartbreak. Ward Bond as Pat Wheeler. Ward Bond, born April 9, 1903 in Benkelman, Nebraska, was 56 years old when he portrayed Pat Wheeler in Rio Bravo, 1959. Bond brought grit and gravitas to the role of the honorable freight wagon boss who offers to help Sheriff John Chance, only to be shockingly gunned down, a death that stunned audiences and eerily mirrored the tragic abruptness of Bond's own fate just a year later. Behind the gruff charm and commanding screen presence, Bond lived a life of pain, solitude, and behind-the-scenes drama. In 1939, he was in a car accident that left his leg permanently injured, yet he kept working through the agony, appearing in over 200 films including The Searchers and It's a Wonderful Life. Though he starred as Major Seth Adams in the hit TV series Wagon Train, fame didn't come with peace. Bond feuded bitterly with co-star Robert Horton, driven by jealousy, ego clashes, and even rumors about Horton's sexuality that Bond allegedly spread. They were said to have made peace just one day before Bond's death. Too little, too late. Bond never married, never had children, and devoted himself entirely to his craft. Off-camera, he was fiercely private and politically conservative, but it was his dedication to acting that defined him. Tragically, on November 5, 1960, while taking a break from Wagon Train filming in Dallas, Bond suffered a massive heart attack in his hotel room. He was just 57. His longtime friend John Wayne helped organize the funeral and carried his casket. At the time of his death, Ward Bond had a net worth of approximately $500,000, modest by Hollywood standards, but earned through 3 decades of relentless work. Walter Brennan as Stumpy. Walter Brennan, born on July 25, 1894 in Lynn, Massachusetts, was 64 years old when he played the unforgettable role of Stumpy in Rio Bravo, 1959. Stumpy is the cranky, limping jailhouse guard with a gravelly voice and a shotgun always close by. Though comic relief on the surface, Stumpy's fierce loyalty and raw courage made it one of Brennan's most iconic performances, and a testament to his genius as a scene-stealing character actor. But Brennan's legacy wasn't all golden. Behind the scenes, he was a deeply conservative man, paranoid, politically extreme, and fiercely vocal about his beliefs. He was a staunch anti-communist, affiliated with the John Birch Society, and reportedly cheered the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Known to stockpile weapons in a home bunker and rant against civil rights movements, Brennan embodied a strain of Hollywood paranoia that's often scrubbed from nostalgic memory. Despite his off-screen toxicity, he was the first actor to win 3 Academy Awards for Best Supporting Actor, a feat unmatched to this day. Yet even his talents couldn't fully shield him from the growing disconnect between his beloved on-screen persona and his bitter real-world views. Physically, Brennan paid a heavy price for decades of chain-smoking and hard work. By the 1970s, he suffered from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and painful arthritis, but he never stopped acting. From the Real McCoys to Support Your Local Sheriff, he kept showing up, worn down, but determined. He stayed married to his wife Ruth for over 50 years, a rarity in the chaos of Hollywood, and carefully invested his earnings, building a surprisingly large real estate fortune behind the scenes. Walter Brennan died on September 21, 1974, in Oxnard, California, at age 80. His cause of death was complications from COPD. At the time of his passing, his net worth was estimated at $10 million, a staggering figure for a supporting actor, earned through grit, craft, and shrewd financial sense. Claude Atkins as Joe Burdett. Claude Atkins was born on May 25, 1926, in Nelson, Georgia, and was 33 years old when he took on the role of Joe Burdett in Rio Bravo, 1959. As the film's primary antagonist, Burdett was a drunken, violent criminal whose cold-blooded murder ignited the entire conflict. Atkins brought a terrifying physicality and presence to the role, creating a villain who felt both real and dangerously unpredictable in the movie. But in contrast to his on-screen menace, Claude Atkins was a complex and quietly remarkable man. He was intellectually sharp, thoughtful, and often cast aside by Hollywood for being too tough-looking. His size typecast him in countless heavy roles, leaving him feeling like a perpetual outsider in the industry. "I'm the highest-paid unknown in Hollywood," he once quipped. Despite appearing in over 400 television episodes and 50 films, including The Caine Mutiny and Movin' On, mainstream stardom never fully embraced him. He watched his peers rise while his roles slowly faded into commercials and guest spots. Off-camera, he lived a clean life, married to one woman, Teresa, for 42 years, with whom he raised 3 children. His final years were shadowed by illness. He was diagnosed with cancer and kept the battle private until the very end. Claude Atkins passed away on January 27, 1994, at the age of 67, at his home in Altadena, California. A funeral mass was held at St. Elizabeth's Catholic Church, and he was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, alongside many of Hollywood's legends. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated around $2 million, a quiet fortune built on persistence, integrity, and sheer volume of work. Estelita Rodriguez as Consuela Robante. Estelita Rodriguez was born on July 2, 1928, in Guanajuato, Cuba. At the age of 30, she played the lively and flirtatious Consuela Robante in Rio Bravo, 1959, providing comic relief and charm in a film dominated by gunfights and tension. With her exotic looks and fiery presence, Estelita stood out, even in a supporting role. It was a rare moment of spotlight in a career that never quite reached the heights it promised. Behind the camera, however, Estelita's life was anything but cheerful. After being signed by Republic Pictures at just 14, she was quickly typecast into stereotypical Latina roles, always the spicy señorita, never the star. The film industry's narrow vision and subtle racism wore her down. She married 4 times, including to actor Grant Withers, but none of the relationships lasted. Rumors swirled of abuse, depression, and exhaustion. Friends said she felt used, forgotten, and ultimately discarded by the very system that once celebrated her. Tragically, on March 12, 1966, Estelita Rodriguez was found dead at her home in Van Nuys, California, just 1 day before her 38th birthday. The cause of death was never publicly confirmed, leading to whispers of overdose, suicide, or even foul play. Her sudden passing shocked those who remembered her vibrant screen presence, and her burial at San Fernando Mission Cemetery drew little media attention. At the time of her death, Estelita's net worth was modest, estimated at under $500,000, much of it tied to residuals and modest investments. It was a quiet end to a life that had once radiated with promise and color. John Russell as Nathan Burdett. John Russell was born on January 3, 1921, in Los Angeles, California. At the age of 38, he appeared in the 1959 Western classic Rio Bravo, playing the cold, powerful antagonist Nathan Burdett. Known for his towering frame and steely gaze, Russell delivered a chilling performance that solidified his status as a go-to villain in Hollywood's golden age of Westerns. Despite his rugged on-screen persona, Russell battled a lifetime of contradictions. He was a proud former Marine, yet quietly haunted by his wartime experiences. Therefore, rumors swirled about his tense relationships with producers, his political stances, and his refusal to bend to studio demands. As his fame waned, so did his health. He suffered from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, worsened by years of smoking, and by the late 1980s, he could barely speak without gasping for breath. Industry insiders whispered that he refused to seek treatment out of pride, isolating himself from former friends and colleagues. By 1991, the once imposing cowboy was a frail shadow of his former self. John Russell died on January 19, 1991, at the age of 70, in Los Angeles from emphysema. His death went mostly unnoticed by a new generation unfamiliar with his era, but die-hard fans mourned quietly. At the time of his death, Russell's estimated net worth was around $1.5 million, a modest sum for a man who had once been the face of law and order on television. Pedro Gonzalez as Carlos Robante. Pedro Gonzalez was born on May 24, 1925, in Aguilares, Texas. At age 34, he appeared in the 1959 classic Rio Bravo as Carlos Robante, the warm-hearted Mexican hotel owner who offered support and shelter to Sheriff John T. Chance during his tense standoff with the Burdett gang. With his rapid-fire speech, expressive eyes, and lively charm, Pedro injected humor and humanity into a film dominated by grit and gunfire. Behind the laughter, Pedro's life was a long, uphill climb. Born into poverty, he spent his youth performing traditional Mexican folk songs with his family to survive. His big break came not from a movie, but from Groucho Marx's TV show You Bet Your Life in 1953, where his wit and energy caught the attention of Hollywood. But that same energy became a double-edged sword. Hollywood typecast him into comic relief roles that leaned into stereotypes of Latinos. Despite the frustration, Pedro never stopped working, appearing in dozens of westerns and TV shows like The High Chaparral and The Ford Show, bringing warmth and vibrancy to every frame. His journey was not glamorous, and fame never brought him wealth. Pedro endured decades in an industry that offered few opportunities for actors of color, yet he persisted with unmatched optimism. He was often dismissed as a novelty, but his 40-year career proved otherwise. He was a survivor, a groundbreaker, and a beloved face for generations of moviegoers who saw more than just a caricature. His refusal to give in to bitterness became his quiet triumph. Pedro Gonzalez. Gonzalez passed away on February 6, 2006, at age 80, from natural causes at his home in Culver City, California. He left behind a modest net worth of about $500,000, built not from fame, but from resilience. Kerry Jr. as Harold. Kerry Jr., whose full name was Henry George Kerry Jr., was born on May 16, 1921, in Santa Clarita, California. When he appeared in the film Rio Bravo, 1959, he was 38 years old and played the role of Harold, a modest townsperson. His gaze and presence left a subtle but resonant mark amid the life-or-death battle between justice and crime. Though the role was small, Kerry Jr. was an indispensable character in the film. However, his life behind the camera was far sadder than the cowboy scenes he once lived. When the spotlight faded and Hollywood went through a changing of the guard, Kerry Jr. was pushed to the margins. From once riding horses with John Wayne and enjoying the absolute trust of John Ford, he became a survivor among the ashes of the golden era of Western films. No scandals, no controversies, but it was the oblivion that dealt the harshest blow. He once wrote a memoir titled Company of Heroes in 1994, but it was not a boastful declaration. It was a cry for a bygone era that had long died within him. His 68-year-long marriage to Marilyn Fix was one of the few bright spots in that quiet life. They were not wealthy. They did not walk red carpets, but they were always together during the days when Hollywood had forgotten the name Kerry Jr. As friends gradually passed on, from John Ford to John Wayne, he remained, silently chewing on loneliness like a guardian for a cinema legacy that no longer existed. Kerry Jr. passed away on December 27, 2012, in Santa Barbara, California, at the age of 91. The cause was confirmed to be natural causes, but for Western film lovers, it was the end of a living symbol of the cowboy film era. His net worth was estimated at around $1 million, modest compared to what he had contributed to cinema. Malcolm Atterbury as Jake. Malcolm Atterbury was born on February 20, 1907, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He appeared in the classic film Rio Bravo, 1959, at the age of 52, playing Jake, a quiet hotel worker caught in the chaos of the town's standoff. Though a minor character, Jake represented the everyday man trying to survive amid rising tensions, embodying the silent backbone of a crumbling community. Off-screen, Atterbury led a humble yet persistent career, often overshadowed by bigger names. He had a chilling cameo in Hitchcock's North by Northwest, 1959, delivering the haunting line, "That plane's dustin' crops where there ain't no crops." Despite memorable roles, his name rarely made headlines. Hollywood insiders whispered that his refusal to conform and network kept him typecast in background roles, always the man in the shadows, never the star. Health issues plagued Atterbury throughout his life, forcing him to step back from major opportunities. He was said to battle chronic conditions privately, choosing to work quietly in television and theater. His career was marked by small but essential roles, each one carrying quiet dignity, while his real-life battles remained largely unknown. Malcolm Atterbury died on August 16, 1992, in Beverly Hills, at the age of 85. The cause of death was never publicly disclosed. He was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, a resting place for many of Hollywood's legends. Though his net worth was estimated at under $1 million, his legacy lies not in fortune, but in the depth he brought to even the briefest appearances. Bing Russell as Cowboy. Bing Russell was born on May 5, 1926, in Brattleboro, Vermont. When he appeared in Rio Bravo in 1959, he was 33 years old and played an unnamed cowboy, a background character with no dialogue, but who conveyed an authentic, dusty, and stoic Western aura. With eyes sharp as knives and a slow, cautious stride, Bing left a lasting impression, like a silent ghost haunting the wild frontier. However, before coming to Hollywood, Bing once pursued the dream of becoming a professional baseball player until a fastball struck him in the head, leaving him in a coma and unable to speak for several weeks. That accident took away his athletic dream, but opened another door, where he accepted becoming the forever supporting actor in the film industry. The harsh truth, however, is that he never once had a leading role despite appearing in over 100 film and television productions. At one point, he fell into depression, was diagnosed with anxiety disorder, and had to undergo quiet treatment for many years, all while smiling on screen and portraying some of America's toughest men. Bing Russell once shared, "Hollywood is a cruel desert, where those who don't shine will be buried alive in oblivion." He clung on by accepting every role offered, from TV episodes like Bonanza to films like The Magnificent Seven, just to support his family and quietly inspire his son, Kurt Russell, who would later become a true movie star. Outside of acting, Bing founded the semi-professional baseball team Portland Mavericks as a form of revenge for the dream that had been buried in his youth. Under his leadership, the Mavericks became a rebellious symbol of 1970s American sports, defying every convention of major leagues. On April 8, 2003, Bing Russell took his final breath in Los Angeles after silently battling cancer for many years. He was 76 years old. His estimated net worth at the time of death was around $10 million, mostly earned through film investments and managing the Mavericks baseball team. Bob Steele as Matt Harris. Bob Steele, born Robert North Bradbury Jr. on January 23, 1907 in Pendleton, Oregon, was 52 years old when he appeared as Matt Harris in Rio Bravo, 1959. Steele brought grit and charm to even the smallest roles, and his performance as Harris, though brief, left a lasting impression. Behind the cowboy hat and rugged smirk, however, was a life filled with fading fame. Steele's golden era came in the 1930s and 1940s, where he starred in over 150 films, yet most were low-budget westerns that paid little and faded fast. Despite early promise, he was branded a typecast has-been by the 1950s, with Hollywood insiders mocking his inability to break into mainstream success. Rumors swirled about Steele's volatile temper on set, fueled by years of chain-smoking, alcoholism, and a growing sense of irrelevance. His health began to deteriorate in the 1970s, and some reports claimed he was seen wandering the backlots of studios where he was once adored, confused, thin, and coughing uncontrollably. Behind the scenes, his marriage struggled as his wife Virginia reportedly cared for him like a nurse, rather than a partner, in his final years. The most tragic part of Steele's downfall came in his final decade, when emphysema slowly crushed his lungs, likely the result of decades of tobacco addiction. Isolated and forgotten, he spent his last days in and out of St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank, California. The man who once rode stallions across the silver screen now struggled to breathe without a mask. On December 21, 1988, Bob Steele passed away from heart failure at the age of 81. His death received minimal coverage, a mere footnote in the fading pages of Hollywood's golden age. He left behind a grieving wife and a modest estimated net worth of $500,000. Fred Graham, as second Burdett man. Fred Graham was born on October 26, 1908, in Springer, New Mexico. At the age of 51, he appeared in the 1959 classic Western Rio Bravo, playing the small but memorable role of the second Burdett man, one of the armed henchmen in Nathan Burdett's gang. Though his screen time was brief, Graham's menacing presence added a tense layer to the film's climactic moments. But behind the tough cowboy persona was a man quietly crumbling under the weight of injuries and disillusionment. Years of stunt work had left Graham with chronic pain, broken ribs, and a partially fused spine, conditions he kept hidden to avoid losing work. Rumors swirled in the early 70s that he had developed an addiction to painkillers, a claim his family vehemently denied. What wasn't denied, however, was his increasing bitterness toward the film industry that had used him up and discarded him. He was once overheard saying, "They shoot the horse when it goes lame. They just let us rot." Graham's final years were marked by obscurity and financial struggle. Though he had worked on over 200 films and television shows, he never gained leading man status or substantial wealth. By the time of his death on October 10, 1979, at the age of 70, he was reportedly living in a modest trailer in California's high desert. The cause of death was heart failure, exacerbated by years of untreated injuries and stress. His estimated net worth at the time was a mere $200,000, hardly reflective of a lifetime spent getting thrown off horses, shot at, and burned for the camera. Myron Healey as Barfly. Myron Healey, born June 8, 1923 in Petaluma, California, was just 36 years old when he briefly appeared as a nameless barfly in Rio Bravo, 1959. With his deep, commanding voice and signature sly grin, Healey became one of the most recognizable villains in Western cinema. But behind the scowl and gunsmoke was a man slowly worn down by the grind of Hollywood's second tier. Healey spent decades portraying outlaws, henchmen, and drunkards, roles that paid little and aged him fast. As the Western genre faded in the 1970s, so too did the demand for his talents. He found himself stuck in B-movie reruns while younger, flashier stars took over the screen. Some claimed he struggled with loneliness, often spotted alone at Western fan conventions, dressed in dusty cowboy gear that reminded no one but himself of his past glory. His deep voice, once his calling card, was weakened by years of untreated respiratory issues. By the early 2000s, Healey had largely vanished from public life, living quietly in Simi Valley. On December 21, 2005, Myron Healey died of respiratory failure at Providence St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank, the same hospital where many forgotten stars of old Hollywood spent their last days. Healey left behind an estate worth an estimated $300,000, modest, like the roles he played. Their final scenes were not written in scripts, but in sorrow, silence, and fading lights. These beloved Rio Bravo stars may be gone, but their stories still echo through time. Which of their fates shocked you the most? Like, comment, and share to honor their legacy.